everyone. So today we will be discussing self-monitoring of food intake using a food diary versus calorie tracking app and calorie consumption. A brief overview is that this was a small weight loss study where a researcher examined the use of self-monitoring with a digital weight loss app known as MyFitnessPal versus a food diary notebook in one person diagnosed with obesity. There was only one participant that volunteered for the study, which was 3 weeks long. He was recruited from a weight loss clinic in St. Louis, Missouri. Results of the study indicate that when tracking caloric intake with food consumption, calories were significantly reduced in the participant who volunteered for the present study. So a little bit of an intro and a background for you all. Obesity is on the rise all throughout the United States and around the globe. On average, people gain a pound a year. So with this being said, I think we can all tell that obesity can cause various health issues. Some of these issues are not limited to cancer, heart issues, multiple issues, and sleep apnea. So with this being said, the amount of medical spending due to obesity alone is about $147 billion in the United States. However, there may be one solution to the problem that is free and effective. So a little bit of background continued. What I was saying before about a free way to lose weight and monitor our weight is a mobile health application and self-monitoring. So what are mobile health applications? So basically they're an educational tool and a motivational tool that serve as an intervention to weight loss. So basically what a food calorie application does is it's downloaded onto your phone, and what happens is it can track your physical activity, it can track your caloric intake, and you can even input some of your own foods into the system itself, so it can tell you exactly what the nutritional value and information is of that product, as well as the amount of calories you're consuming with that product. So for example, in 2014 there was a sleep apnea study where individuals used calorie tracking to monitor their weight loss. And basically the results of this study said that people who self-monitored their caloric intake significantly reduced their weight than with individuals who did not. So what is the purpose of this study? So basically the purpose is to find evidence that supports a hypothesis that mobile health applications can significantly reduce calories in a sleep apnea patient when compared to self-monitoring food diaries, and are effective interventions. In other words, does seeing caloric intake actually reduce caloric intake? So let's look at the methods of this section. So for our participants, we had a 48-year-old man with sleep apnea weighing approximately 462 pounds. He was recruited from a weight loss clinic in St. Louis, Missouri. And how was he recruited, you might ask? Basically what happened is he went into the weight loss clinic, and when he was signing in at the desk, basically the secretary would go around telling people about this study itself and what criteria the participant had to meet to be in this study. The participant was not allowed to have had any weight loss surgery done, no gastric bypass or anything like that, had no history of mental health issues, and also be able to read and write and have a cellular device. So prior to the study, the participant had to meet with the nutritionist at the weight loss clinic, and you might be asking why. So basically what happened is the participant went into the clinic, met with the nutritionist, so they were able to find out and learn about what healthy foods are, basically just like fruits, vegetables, things like that will help him lose weight in the long run. Also, he was also notified about how many calories the average male is supposed to consume a day, and that's around 2,000 to 2,500 calories just to maintain weight and lose weight. So a list of materials for this study include a list of healthy foods that was provided by the nutritionist. So basically the participant was given a list of foods that were very healthy, great nutritional value, so he could kind of be influenced by those results, like by that paper. A notebook was also used as a food diary. So basically a food diary is just like a composition notebook, and it has lined paper inside. It was dated at the top of each page, and breakfast, lunch, and dinner were listed in the notebook. So basically all the participant had to do was write down what they consumed for each meal, and if they had snacks or whatnot. Everything they consumed had to be written down. The mobile health application was also used, but this was just during the intervention phase. A weight loss scale was also used, and a printed out version of MyFitnessPal results. So, dependent measures of this study. Basically, some of the dependent measures of this study, it was the caloric intake that the individual was consuming throughout the study when he had the food diary and when he was using the mobile health application. Another dependent measure of the study was also how much he was weighing throughout the study. So, his weight was monitored as well as his caloric intake. So, some reliability in IOA. A way that we kept track of this during the study was monitoring of the food diary. So basically what happened is the participant had to hand in his food diary at the end of each baseline phase. So the researchers could take the notebook, look at it, make sure the individual was writing down breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, all the foods that they were consuming throughout the day, but also the participant had to hand in the notebook anyway, so the researchers could actually figure out the caloric intake of the foods that he was consuming without him knowing. Another part of reliability in IOA for this study was weighing the participant. Basically, the participant was weighed after each phase of baseline and intervention phases. This helped and showed that the participant was losing weight throughout the trial or gaining weight throughout the baseline phases or intervention phases. It basically was a way that we could be like, okay, this is a valid study. We are measuring what we're supposed to be measuring. Because if caloric intake is being reduced, then weight will probably be reduced too. So the design that we used was an ABA withdrawal design. So what happened was there was 1 week of baseline with a food diary where the participant would not see caloric intake. And then after this phase, there was a week of intervention phase without the food diary. So basically the food diary was being withdrawn in this study. So, but the mobile health app was implemented during this phase. So after that phase, there was another week of a return to baseline phase where the food diary was only used. So for procedures, prior to the study, the participant was sent to the weight loss clinic nutritionist. I mentioned this before. Basically, he needed to be taught what healthy foods were and what the daily caloric intake of an average male would be. And after this, the baseline phase occurred where the participant went home and recorded everything that they ate in their food diary. So after this phase of the 1 week baseline, the participant came back to the clinic and was weighed, and also his food diary was taken away from him. And he was the nutritionist taught him how to use the mobile health application MyFitnessPal. After this, the intervention phase began, which was again a 1 week period of time where the participant monitored what he was eating, and he typed this into the mobile health application MyFitnessPal, which is actually used by over 150 million individuals, which is fantastic. But so he basically could track his caloric intake while inputting what he was eating throughout the day on this app. After this phase, the participant returned back to the clinic, and the return to baseline phase began where the food diary was returned to the participant. And after this, the participant went back to the clinic, returned his materials, and was weighed again. And he was sent home and the experiment was complete. So I just want to reiterate again, he was weighed after each baseline and intervention of treatment so we could track his weight. So let's look at some independent variables and treatment conditions in this experiment. So in the baseline phases, the independent variable was the food diary. We chose to use the food diary so we could track and see what he was eating. And in the intervention phase, the mobile health application MyFitnessPal was used as an independent variable. So let's look at some results here. Basically, this is the average calories consumed each day during the phases of the male participant. So if we look at this baseline phase right here, we can see that he's eating a lot of calories. If we look closely, he's eating between 8 and 10,000 calories on Sunday, and then it decreases Monday and Tuesday, but his highest caloric intake happens to be the last day of his baseline phase, which is almost around 14,000 calories. We will look at this in a table so I can tell you the actual numbers. During the intervention phase, you can see a huge amount of variability between the baseline and intervention phase where caloric intake is significantly reduced. However, when we look at the intervention to baseline phase, there is some moderate variability from the intervention to baseline phase, but not as much as you would see in the initial baseline and intervention phase. So we'll discuss this when we go see another table. This table is a little different. This is actually the weight of participant in pounds after each phase. This, like I said before, was used for IOA and reliability to show what we were measuring was actually valid. So basically during the baseline phase, the participant weighed 462 pounds. In the intervention phase, he weighed 455 pounds. So he reduced his weight by 7 pounds during these phases. And in the baseline phase, he gained 4 pounds, which was the return to baseline phase. So he did actually lose the most amount of weight during the intervention phase, where he was actually seeing his caloric intake. So this is the other graph I was talking about that coincides with the other graph, the withdrawal graph. So basically this was the average calories consumed each day during each phase. So basically what this shows is that in the initial baseline phase, the participant consumed around 6,134 calories that entire week. And then during the intervention phase, the participant consumed only 20,587 of those calories, which is significantly less than when the participant used the food diary during the initial baseline phase. And then we move on to the second return to baseline phase, where 39,547 calories, were consumed. This suggests that calories were significantly reduced between the first baseline and intervention phase of treatment. So during the return to baseline phase, the participant consumed quite a bit of calories, which is around 22,258 calories more than what was consumed during that intervention phase, but still 17,289 calories less than the initial baseline, suggesting the intervention phase might have influenced the return to baseline phase. So with that being said, I can tell you that the hypothesis in the experiment was proven that yes, the weight loss app significantly reduced caloric intake versus the food diary. It shows that the weight loss app was effective in reducing calories and helping the participant lose weight, but there's quite a bit of limitations in the study. One big limitation is that the experiment itself could have been longer. It would have made the experiment more reliable and made us actually see that in the future, like there would have been a trend and that the participant probably would have lost more weight if we kept going with the intervention phase. Another big limitation is we cannot generalize this study to other populations. We can in some sorts if they're healthy without mental illness, but there is a study that occurred where a mobile health application was used with individuals with eating disorders, and it actually turned out that the results of the study found that mobile health applications made eating disorders worse with people with mental illness. So that's a huge factor to look at. Another thing too, that's kind of a limitation of this study, is that the intervention phase probably influenced the return to baseline phase. So we could see before, I'll show you again, that basically what happened is you would have thought that the participant would have been eating this many calories here, but it turned out he's kind of in the middle here, he's of what he consumed from the baseline and intervention phase. He didn't eat as much as he did in the initial baseline phase, but he ate more than he did in the intervention phase. And this is possibly due to the fact that he might have been eating or recalling what he put into the MyFitnessPal app, which actually helped him figure out what caloric intake is in what foods. Also, a big limitation of the study is that the participant might have been reactive. So reactive in the sense that the participant almost viewed, he basically might have changed what he was eating, so because he feared judgment from the researchers. So this is all I have for my presentation, and I thank you guys very much.